or on the other hand, to be able to focus more in life and maybe realize that it's important to be able to commit to something in order to deepen it, whether that's a relationship or that's some artistic expression or some important work out in the business community. My point is that these dimensions, and I often characterize them in terms of constriction and expansion, because I think these polarities often play out across many psychological forms of suffering, where you have depression, anxiety, obsessive compulsiveness, substance abuse that sedates, sort of on the constrictive polarity, and you have indulgent and impulsive and aggressive, hyper-aggressive kinds of behaviors, grandiose kinds of behaviors on the hyper-expansive end, if you will. And I'm not saying that people break down into these two polarities in any clear way at all, but I find they're helpful as gestalts. They kind of give us a sense of the shape of what's going on for that person and what their complex is about, where their behaviors and experiences cluster. And they tend to cluster polarized against that pole that's associated with some kind of annihilation. Again, some kind of free-falling terror, either in terms of chaos or in terms of being wiped away, or both, swinging back and forth. So, in summary, I view this existential humanistic therapy in general as a kind of reoccupation project. It's both literally and figuratively, it's about helping a person to gradually and at their own pace begin to reoccupy the parts or polarities within themselves that they've cut off and denied. So it's not just about thinking about those problem areas in different ways, or reprogramming or changing the behavior through drugs or some kind of behavioral intervention. Although all of these modalities can be very helpful. I developed something that I call existential integrative therapy, where I see all these modalities as important to the therapeutic process, depending on where the person is at. But my point is that for more fundamental change, for deeper change, for many people, not everyone, there needs to be this soup, this atmosphere created or co-created with the client, whereby the client feels he is able to indwell, actually occupy those parts in an experiential way that he's cut off. Because I really believe that for many people, fundamental change doesn't happen unless it comes through one's own sense of agency at the most core level and out of one's own search process to discover that sense of agency. Otherwise, it's somewhat externalized. It's somewhat because this is what the culture says, or this is the rational way, or this is what the doctor tells you. And that's not the kind of shift, I believe, that often holds up in the long run for people. What's going to hold up in the long run is if somebody can honestly embody the parts of themselves they've cut off and discover at the deepest levels what they deeply want, what profoundly holds them back, and what they profoundly want, what really matters about their life, their space and time. And I think that's what this kind of therapy can bring. Now back to this question of mystery and awe. I think there's a number of ways that traditional therapies approach the mystery or the free fall of being. Now, cognitive behavioral therapy has a notion they call catastrophizing, where one is magnifying a problem. So let's say one fears rejection because they've been rejected in the past and they were traumatized by rejection. So cognitive behavioral therapists might help a person at the level of thinking more scientifically about their rejection. That statistically they're not likely to be rejected if they take some chances and try to meet some people. And they are not likely to be shunned by people, that's very rare. So they can see that logically. And so they help the person stop catastrophizing. But the point I want to make is that at some level, catastrophe is all around us. And this so-called irrational thought and person, I believe, is in touch with a dimension of their being that is catastrophic at a certain level. And the question is, how far into that, again, that free fall into, in this case, maybe it would be fear of being rendered invisible in the world. How far into that is the person willing or able to go so that they don't just bypass it with some, sort of antiseptic thoughts. But again, this could be helpful to some people at some times. But to go more deeply into the problem, it seems to me the person needs to take time to search it out and explore it and actually embody that harrowing place of feeling so fragile and non-entity-like, if you will, and discover what the meaning of that is, and maybe discover out of it also a new power, new resources. But part of my point here is that it can't be just talked about at that point. I think it has to be held and supported. One's experience needs to be held and supported to stay present to that kind of place and find a way of coming to terms with it experientially.